4 minutes until showtime. 3 minutes until showtime. 2 minutes until showtime. 1 minute until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
With Election Day in less than 2 months, what is on the line is not a simple difference of policies, it is the fate of our nation. Judicial activists at all levels have put roadblocks in the way of justice. The 34-time convicted felon will not see a prison cell before Election Day. MAGA activists at state and local levels are working to disenfranchise voters, and foreign governments are paying conservative bloggers to spread their propaganda. On Liberal Day Radio, we cut through the lies, unwind the spin, and give facts to counter their fiction. Will you do what needs to be done to make sure our nation isn't taken over by an autocratic despot? Or will you sit back and watch as our nation falls to ruin? The clock is ticking. Act now, before it's too late. in the conversation. You can either call into the show, 914-803-4131. That's 914-803-4131. If you're calling in, just make sure to leave your area code and your name in the chat so that I know I can do some call screening and know who you are. If you're listening live on Blog Talk Radio, I've already told you on the Blog Talk Radio page that this episode is probably going to be best watched from YouTube or Twitch, so hop on over to liberaldanradio.com, which is the YouTube channel, or twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. Of course, unless you want to call in, you can of course call in using the Blog Talk Radio number. You can also join us in the chat, leave questions, comments, etc., and I will get to them as I can. There's a pro tip, I guess, would be to if you go to the Twitch chat, it's usually less populated, so you're more likely to not have your comments scroll off screen. However, I do want lots and lots and lots of YouTube views, so, it's a catch-22 with that one, I suppose. You can also support the show, liking the stream, liking the video, commenting, interactions, subscribing to the channel if you've not already done so, commenting, liking, etc., all the other videos that are already up here on liberaldanradio.com. You can gift subscriptions, buy your own subscription, become a Liberal Danimal, join the crew of Danimals, and you could also come over to Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you could get a free subscription every month. You got to renew it every month, but it's free with Amazon Prime. Otherwise, you could buy subscriptions, gift subscriptions, and also purchase bits over on Twitch. You can also purchase super chats and super stickers on YouTube. You can become a patron, patreon.com/liberaldan or patreon.liberaldan.com. Either way will get you there. For more monthly ways to contribute, one at a time, you could always Venmo, LiberalDan at Venmo, or you could also do Liberal Dan Radio on buymeacider.com, or just click, or buymeacoffee.com, sorry. It's the Buy Me a Cider button on liberaldan.com. Just click that. You can do another one-time contribution, and your little image will show up on screen showing that you made a contribution to the show. So we got the Mod Squad in the house, Jolie and Aaron. Thank y'all again for all that you do. We got Kella Hella, Janelle, Jeff, Steve from across the pond, Jackie, Roxanne, sorry. You don't have to put on the red light. Those days are over. Sorry. Dakota Dave. Who else am I missing? Dawn. I think I might have said Dawn already. Let's scroll on down. Scott. We got Scott in the house. Jan. Got dogs barking downstairs. Hopefully they'll take care of them with whatever's going on with that. Probably the little puppy trying to play with the cats that won't play with him because they avoid him like the plague. Anyway. I feel like I'm being pickled as we speak because my youngest son has been begging to go to this one restaurant in town because he's really gotten a hankering for seafood. We've done a good job with him training to be a Louisiana boy when it comes to his liking of food. And the crab legs today were definitely full of seasoning, full of salt, and I'm going to be devouring this water as we go along for the show, and I feel like I'm going to be pickled by tomorrow. So call me just Pickle Dan, I guess, instead of Liberal Dan, or maybe Liberal Pickle. Who knows? Fun story. My name was going to be Dylan. My mom wanted to name me Dylan. Except for the fact that she was concerned that people would shorten Dylan to Dill, and then call me Dill Pickles, and then I'd have to stick with the nickname of Pickles the entire life. I don't know how many people have named Dylan have to deal with that, but who knows. The reason I was named Dylan, I was going to be Dylan Zimmerman, because Bob Dylan's name is Robert Zimmerman. So that's why I was going to be Dylan, but instead I got Dan, or Daniel, if you will. So... I just thought your feet hurt barking dogs downstairs. Yes, my dogs are barking. Usually with my body, it's usually not the dogs that are barking. It's usually the knees that hurt. I don't know if there's another animal term for knees aching, creaking, or what have you. Yes, Liberal Dan Pickle Show. Liberal Pickle. What's the dill? We'll do a segment. What's the dill? Talking about all sort. It'll be like a food show, I guess, where I discuss all different types of ways to pickle cucumbers and other various vegetables and eggs, I guess, because you can pickle eggs. You can pickle anything, I guess, if you really feel like it. If you believe in yourself, anything's possible. I do want to say Happy New Year to all of my fellow Jewish people out there. Tonight is Erev Rosh Hashanah, which means the night of Rosh Hashanah, because, of course, Jewish holidays typically start at sundown and go to the next day. So it's sundown here in New Orleans, so therefore it is officially the start of the Jewish New Year. So Lashana Tova to all of my fellow tribes members. I'm sitting here on a high holiday doing a podcast, so that tells you how observant of a Jewish person I am. But observant or not, at the end of the day, guess what? The Nazis still want me dead. They don't care if I'm observant. They don't care if I don't go to synagogue much, if at all. They don't care if I don't keep the Sabbath and make it holy. They don't care, but they don't care if I fast for Yom Kippur. None of that matters to the Nazis. None of that matters to the white supremacists. All that matters to them is the fact that I'm Jewish, and therefore I am a threat to them for some reason. So Aaron, I was always named Jessica, but my dad had a thing for Aaron Moran. Nice. A little weird, but nice. At least your parents put some thought into it. I had to live with Mason Shithead Whisperer for some 50 some odd years. Nice. So I thought Rosh Hashanah was a magic resistant tigers, people who cast level 3 magic and are known for intelligence. That could very well be as well. It's been a while since I've played Dungeons & Dragons, but, hey. Happy holiday, I can't pronounce you too, Dan. Well, at least, Rosh Hashanah is a lot easier than some of the other ones. Of course, most people don't know how to spell Hanukkah. Even Jewish people argue as to whether or not they spell Hanukkah correctly. So, let's see what else. What else is in the chat? I think I missed something. Well, we do have Jojo Mojo. Hello, Jojo Mojo. If I've missed you and haven't said hello, I apologize. Things have scrolled quite quickly. But again, I did want to make sure that since this was the first day of the Jewish New Year, to wish my fellow tribes people a good how do you do, etc. Dakota Dave, sorry I'm painting and listening. What are you painting, David? Dakota Dave, is it something like, your house, walls, your toenails, your fingernails, miniatures? Either way. I said, Liberal Dan, have you seen the latest Betty Bowers? Have you seen Betty Bowers' latest voter suppression? Lots more expensive than I knew. No reporting either. I haven't yet. I'll have to go check it out. I will have to go check it out. We have covered a lot of stuff on voter suppression on the show, especially the GOP coup series that I have, which still remains valid to this day. If you can check out the GOP coup series as one of my playlists, I have a bunch of videos there where we talk about it. Jewish Mexican spell it Juanica. Yes, and instead of potato latkes, we have tres leche cakes, I guess. I don't know. So, Aaron, girl goes to her dad. Why is my brother called Emil? Dad says your mom's idea. She loves lime, and backwards it's Emil. Thanks, Dad. Dad replies, no problem, Lana. That could be a joke for Liberal Dan Radio After Dark, but it's clean enough where it's not actually said anything dirty, but there you go. So there you go. Yes, great joke, Steve. I'm surprised it didn't come from Jeff. That would be a joke that I would expect to come from Jeff. I don't want to know what else would come from Jeff, though, before Jeff gets to it. Anyway, painting your pantry. Okay, there you go. Speaking of coming, here's Impeccable Living. How are you doing tonight, Impeccable Living? Good to see you. So I named a black lab. We saved Perlita del Negro. She was cool. Poor girl was eating the dirt outside a restaurant, throwing their oil in the soil. Ugh. Poor puppy indeed. Of course, my puppy is Blanche because we have Golden Girls. Golden Girls names pets, so we have Stan, Blanche, Rose, Sophia, and Gloria. We need a Dorothy apparently, but I don't know when that's going to happen because I think we have too many pets at this point. So, but yes, they're both the dogs are Labradors as well. And let me tell you, my youngest one, the younger one, is driving. Stan is driving Blanche absolutely batshit crazy. So, I have to, in order for me to go out of town and be able to board Stan, I have to bring Stan to the daycare for a day to make sure that everything works okay and make sure everything gets along with it. He deals with it fine, etc. So tomorrow Blanche has a day of peace. So there you go. So anything else in the chat that I've missed before we move on to some of the other topics? I think I had another comment I wanted to make, and it completely just went out of my head. So if I get to it, if I remember it again, I'll remember it again. But it is what it is. There you go. So we have some stuff to go over. I mean, we were live fact checking as me and the listeners know how to do yesterday during the debate between JD Vance and Tim Walz. Generally speaking, looking at the post-polling numbers, it looked like, again, JD Vance probably did better than what people expected him to do when it came to likability, but people shouldn't forget that he's still a shitbag. And, with his cat lady comments and all his other policies he supports, and the fact that, he went from calling Donald Trump America's Hitler to supporting America's Hitler for president. So if that doesn't tell you what a shitbag JD Vance is, I don't know what to tell you. But pretty much on almost every issue, Tim Walz won last night. There's only and like on the issues that JD Vance pulled higher, like the economy and immigration, it was like 51-49 or 50-49, so very, very within the margin of error. So, and then the other areas where Tim
90 seconds.
What? I am not 90. I put the show for 3 minutes. What are you talking about? Or not 3 minutes, 3 hours, not 15 minutes. But we are going to change that immediately. So, there we go. Show is now 180 minutes. We're no longer 90 seconds away from show ending. Yay. So yeah, all the other areas where Walz really overperformed over Vance were not within the margin of error. So that clearly shows that Governor Walz won last night. No way around it. So that debate was so disappointing last night. Thank gay God a guy from Grindr came over last night to take my mind off of it. Well, why should this night be different than all other nights? Although that's a question that Jewish people actually ask on Passover, not on Rosh Hashanah, but I think it still applies. I mean, damn. You have a very fun life there, Impeccable Living. Did Joe Biden have to debate Sarah Palin? I don't think he'd had to, but he did. There you go again, Joe. It was just so funny, though. That debate, or the news from that debate and the reporting of that debate was just so hilarious because during the debate prep, apparently Sarah Palin could not stop herself from saying, "Oh, Biden." She kept saying, "Oh, Biden." So basically, look, go, at the beginning of the debate, walk up and ask if she can call her, if you can call her Joe, if you can call him Joe. So, "Oh, can I call you Joe?" "Oh, sure." And that allowed her to get away with not saying "Oh, Biden" so many times. So, so Mr. Rayson, no ground was gained or lost last night. That's what you wanted of a VP debate. You don't want to be Admiral Stockdale. Yeah, Admiral Stockdale. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be Admiral Stockdale. That's for darn sure. But what is interesting, and something that somebody posited on one of the news shows that I think would be very interesting to think, is that Donald Trump has vehemently said that he is not going to debate because he falsely claims that he beat Harris in the debate. He falsely claims that, even though he looked like, he looked terrible. He acted terrible. I don't think he could say he won the debate against Biden just simply because he sharded on live TV. However, people have been, well, at least one person suggested today on MSNBC that it's possible that Donald Trump's ego will prevent him from will cause him to want to debate Vice President Harris one more time because he can't, his own ego will have a problem allowing Vance to have the last word on a nationwide debate, especially because JD Vance didn't go all vitriolic and horrible like Donald Trump would. I'm sure Donald Trump probably threw several bottles of ketchup at the wall because he was not doing the vitriolic thing. So, Jan Harris was charged with addressing the surge of Central American migrants from Northern Triangle countries. Okay, but and one of the ways that she tried to deal with that is by getting the bipartisan immigration bill passed, and it passed the Senate. It was mostly written, if not all completely written, by a Republican senator from Oklahoma. And the reason the bipartisan bill that was supported by the Border Patrol, supported by the Chamber of Commerce, supported by Democrats, supported by Republicans, i.e., a bipartisan bill, and not a bipartisan bill as, oh, we got one Republican to come along. No, bipartisan bill. The reason why it didn't pass is because Donald Trump didn't want the issue to be solved, or didn't want progress to be made on the issue, which is why, he told his goose-stepping Nazis in the House to not pass the bill, including Speaker Johnson. So that's the problem, is that she would have had the job done, except Donald Trump sabotaged her. Just like it's probably that potentially Donald Trump sabotaged the discussions between the longshoremen and causing the strike. Because as we've seen, it's been revealed that the head of the longshoremen union is a Trump supporter. He's a good buddy of Donald Trump. So while, I did say my stance still stands that I'm not going to be critical of union people specifically for asking for, quote, too much, because that's how you negotiate properly. You negotiate by asking for more than what you want in order to go back to what you want. The fact that the head of the longshoremen union and Donald Trump are friends tells you that something here doesn't pass the smell test, and that doing this right before the election, 5 weeks before the election or so, is basically him doing his buddy Donald Trump a favor by trying to sabotage the economy so that Donald Trump looks better, because now the Biden-Harris administration is having to deal with another mess. But it's a mess created by either Trump or supporters of Trump, which you would hope that people would be able to be smart enough to overlook. But this is why after the 2016 Nevada primaries, Donald Trump said that he loves the poorly educated. Because the poorly educated will try over and over and over again to prove that they're still worthy of that love. So they're not going to listen to any things that make sense, i.e., that this thing was done purposely by individuals who were close to Donald Trump in order to try and sabotage Kamala Harris's election chances by making the Biden and Harris administration look bad with this strike. So that's one thing we have to do, is point out, is that this is all political nonsense. This is all done specifically because Donald Trump wants to sabotage everything done by this nation unless he's leading it. And he's still going to sabotage a bunch of other things too, but he's never going to want anybody to do anything that's going to help this country if it doesn't help him. Because that's Donald Trump's bottom line for anything that he does. If it helps him, he's behind it. If it doesn't help him, he's not behind it. That's another reason why we have to all stand up together and reject Donald Trump for president again. So, there you go. Easy, I'm going to start calling them Nazis for now on now. Start calling who Nazis? See, the bipartisan bill didn't make it out of the Trilateral Commission when it was brought up for a referendum in the Quad Cities. Good, well, good play on words there. So did any of you see the story of a 43-foot tall naked Trump marionette that just appeared in Nevada? Trump cultists are furious. Does it have a significantly tiny peppy? Who knows? Hey, Spicy Dragon, good to see you. Thanks for joining the show. Oh, the cannoli of the marionette was too big? Well, as we've confirmed from Stormy Daniels, that,
we know that he's not packing. That's for darn sure. So DJT isn't the missionary of change. He's the missionary of chaos. Absolutely 100%. Jolie, Harold Daggett is a criminal, although he evaded prosecution twice. He makes nearly $1 million a year. He wants those Trump tax breaks. Of course he does. And he wants, I'm sure by doing this, and if Trump wins, he might get some really good perks as well above and beyond just getting tax cuts to benefit him. So, I think the 45-foot tall marionette is supposed to be part of being John Malkovich too. Maybe. Is it being John Malkovich 2 Electric Boogaloo? I think any 2 movie needs to have Electric Boogaloo after it. If I'm elected president, I'm going to make sure that every movie that ends with a 2 also includes Electric Boogaloo. He's a mob affiliated guy. I mean, Donald Trump loves himself some mobsters, right? I mean, that's what he loves. He loves mobsters. He wishes he could get away with the crimes that mobsters got away with all the time. You know, those are his heroes. Mobsters and dictators are the people that Donald Trump looks up to. Big Hook, Jack Smith indictment was released. I know, it's on one of my windows, and we will be going over it in a little bit. Because I'm prepared here on Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right, Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central. We did miss the 820 token on the 20s. If you are partaking, make sure to puff pass. So education should have all of DH whatever to do with being just a good, compassionate person, having empathy and kindness for other people who literally have nothing at times. But that's the thing. The people who are maggots don't have empathy or compassion for other people, for their fellow human beings. It's not something that they're capable of. They just don't want to do it. Like there's a group that I'm a member of. I live on the West Bank of New Orleans. It's technically the Mississippi River like comes down like this as you would see it and goes this way. No, actually, as you would see it, it goes this way and then back down, and then no, I think the other way was right, that way. And so we live on the West Bank of the river, even though where we are in relation to the river is south. But most of the West Bank is south of the river, but it's technically still the West Bank. Imagine that, a Jewish person settled on the West Bank. Before I forget, there is a bunch of stuff to talk about with Israel and Iran and all the other stuff going on with Hezbollah, Hamas. But that will probably be discussed. All of that will be discussed on Monday's show, since Monday's show is 10/7, the 1-year anniversary of the terrorist attacks on the state of Israel. So we'll be covering most of that issue then. Kelly, I just came back from getting snacks. Nice. Liberal Dan Radio, where all the people in the chat are snacks. So, Impeccable Living. There's also no such thing as conservative comedy. So-called conservative comedy is just stuff your racist drunk uncle would yell at avoiding. Pretty much. But anyway, I'm in this group called West Bank Noisy Neighbors. It's called that because there was another group called West Bank Nosy Neighbors. And one of the people who runs that group is the host of the most, Nimbus Yosh, with the smooth sounds of the Percy Podcast. We haven't seen the Percy Podcast for a while, but he's still my little bro. We still me, and we still form Voltron from time to time. It's been too long since we formed Voltron. We need to do that again sometime. However, in that group, there are people who love to mock me for being a person of larger stature, i.e. a fat person. They love to do that. There are several people who are New Orleans conservatives, which are a rare breed, but and I had to explain to the person, look, there's when I worked for the Louisiana Department of Health, they did a study, or showed a study, that the people who are obese are more likely, twice as likely, to have been victims of childhood abuse and trauma, and how they dealt with that trauma instead of drugs and alcohol is by eating. That's why so when you're picking on somebody for being obese, you might very well be picking on somebody who is an abuse victim. Now, that's true for me, but also I didn't want to go all into those personal issues on that thread, even though I talk about it publicly on my podcast. But basically, I was like, look, I used to think because I was a bigger guy, it was okay for me to make bigger people jokes at the expense of others. But since I learned that fact, I stopped doing it. Because I don't even make fun of Donald Trump for whatever size he is, and I will push back on people who will mock Donald Trump for his size, simply not because of the fact that I give a rat's ass about how Donald Trump is and how his feelings are. I don't. Donald Trump's a shitbag and deserves all the crap that he gets, but when people hear you making fat jokes about other people, they realize, well, maybe you're not a good, trustworthy person, somebody who is a good person, and maybe they don't trust you with their loved ones and other issues that they're dealing with anymore as well. So typically the only fat jokes I make from this point on are the self-deprecating version. I'm always a fan of self-deprecating humor. So, that's the case. And
it is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. So I don't, so even when it comes to shitbags like Donald Trump, no, I'm not gonna mock him for his weight. There are many other issues to mock him for as well, including things that are of his choice, like, his orange spray tan ridiculousness. But anyway, so I tried to explain this to that person. Of course, they don't give a crap. They wouldn't give a crap at all. But I even said, look, I'm not saying this for the benefit of you, specifically to the person, because I believe that person's heart is so hardened that they're incapable of learning any sort of compassion or changing their mind. But hopefully the other people who read that comment will be like, oh, hey, nose is itching from cat hair, sorry. Oh, hey, I didn't realize that there's such a big correlation between obesity and childhood abuse. Maybe I'll stop being a terrible person to obese people at that point. But to Jojo Mojo, Dan F. People, I know exactly how you feel. I was 440 last Thanksgiving. I'm 242. And I actually feel worse. I've lost all my fluffs. Wow. I mean, that's an impressive weight loss. Was it through weight loss surgery or diet and exercise? How'd you manage to get it done? See, now instead of fat, I got tons of loose skin and I can't afford to have it removed. Look, that is one of the things that terrifies me about going through weight loss surgery. I promise you, that is one of the things that is also at my mind, because I'm a larger person, everything's stretched out, so there's less likely to be wrinkles. But it's hard for me to get around sometimes because of my knees. But hey, but I am concerned about the fact that if I do lose a whole crap ton of weight, that I am going to have to deal with all that loose hanging skin that will now be on my body, which sucks. But diet, working, and stress. Two of those things fit for me, stress and working. I just came from eating all-you-can-eat crab legs, so, I mean, I guess I can't complain too much about the fact, but, as, Hair Donald says, again.
It is what it is.
Impeccable living. I love all body types. Oh, that's good. I mean, but look, back when I was in college, like my early college years, I dated and it's fine. But I've shown y'all a picture of how I looked in high school, and I thought I was fat back then. But I also realized at some point that people are attracted to people, and I shouldn't be insulted about the fact if somebody's not attracted to me, because that's their right, just as it's my right to be not attracted to anybody else. I can't control who I'm attracted to, so why would I be mad if they're not attracted to me, because they can't control it either? Now, they can control how they voice that. Of course, if they voice it in a terrible, evil, deplorable way, then of course that's gonna suck. I do have a thick skin, literally and figuratively. But, see, self-deprecating humor. But once I realized, the funny thing is, once I realized that people weren't gonna, people are gonna be attracted to me regardless, of what I say, what I do. I can't control who's attracted to me. So that made me lose fear of rejection and gain confidence. And once I gained confidence, I actually started dating more, despite the fact that I was even heavier than I was. So Yeah, there's back and forth on Ozempic as to whether or not you should use Ozempic or not. My doctor was trying to get me on Zepbound, but the problem with that is that they've screwed up the prior authorization. So at the moment, but that I think is coming up soon. So hopefully once that comes up, we can try and see if that will help, try and see if that will work. But in Louisiana, insurance companies are the only one of the only few things that Jeff Landry has done that I agree with. Louisiana will now require insurance companies to cover weight loss surgery. If they're a new policy, it has to start next year. But if it's an existing policy, it's possible that they might have to wait for January 1st, 2026 in order for that to happen. So maybe that's my birthday gift if that's the case, because I'm concerned that that's going to be the case. But and it probably will be. If I'm wrong, I'll happy to be wrong. But the amount of times I'm wrong, just happens. I was been right about things that I don't want to be right about much more often than I should be. Spicy Dragon. My grandmother always said, "There's a cover for every pot. There's someone for everyone," and that's true. But the problem is that it's not something that you could just absorb and be like, "Oh, okay." It's something you have to really learn and really believe. And the way it happened for me was honestly several successful hookups and or meeting people over the course of a week and a half, where it was just everything was just flying at me, and I had a very good time, and I was like, wow, this is really awesome, and these people clearly were attracted to me, and it doesn't matter that I was overweight. And back then I was probably at least 150 pounds lighter than I am now. Makes sense. See, do I have thyroid issues? I do not have thyroid issues. My blood work is great, with the exception of the fact that I'm just obese. So, Jan Morgan, Louisiana has reclassified abortion pills, mifepristone and misoprostol, as dangerous drugs. Yes, they're Schedule 4 drugs, and they were required to be locked up in wherever they're kept. They have to be locked up, which we've covered on the show already. So there may be a previous episode that you can go look up and look that up, but we have talked about that on the show. It was something that was very important for me to talk about, because Liberal Dan Radio is very pro-choice. We take a very strong stance on the support of body autonomy, but this isn't even about body autonomy. What happened as a recap, what happened in Louisiana was there was a legislator who didn't want his wife to have another baby. So apparently he ordered mifepristone and misoprostol, and he drugged his wife with that. And it was found out, and I think he's sitting in jail now, sitting in prison, which is good. He should. But Louisiana overreacted when it came to that. Maybe make that a stricter crime. Maybe make drugging somebody against their will an even stricter crime than it already would be, if that's how you want to handle it. But what they've done is they've taken drugs that are used for many reasons other than abortions. Misoprostol is used for stomach ulcers. Misoprostol is used for if you have a post-delivery hemorrhaging, it can be used to help solve that. And if you're somebody who has just given birth and you are hemorrhaging and you need to have the misoprostol now, having it required to be locked in a cart is more time spent getting somebody the medication that they need to have, and as such it puts the patients more at risk, because they're not pro-life. Conservatives are not pro-life, they're pro-harming women. VP recap. Hey, you guys weren't supposed to fact check. And I did notice that during the debate, just to kind of go back to that, I did notice that kind of during the debate that they were asking questions in a way that basically was a fact check. Thank you, Trucker John, for joining us, by the way. They were using recap questions to kind of fact check, even though they weren't telling them, hey, you're wrong, but they did confirm this is an actual thing, blah blah blah. And then of course the thing JD Vance said, the one thing you never want to say during a debate: hey, I thought you were supposed to be fact-checking me, which means you're basically admitting to the fact that you intended on lying during the entire debate, which, how do you know JD Vance is lying? His lips are moving. You're welcome, Jan. Again, I am more than happy to repeat any of those facts, especially when it comes to pro-choice issues, comes to abortion, comes to body autonomy, simply because the fact it's very important that everybody hear it. It's very important that we make sure to turn out this vote, because I'm hoping for darn sure that that we're going to see potentially many more like suburbanite Republican wives who will have their little Trump signs in the yards because their husbands want to put them out there or whatever, but in private, when it's time to go cast their ballot, they're going to vote for Vice President Harris because they don't want to live in a world with more abortion restrictions and more restrictions that put people's lives at risk. And that's what conservative policies do. They put people's lives at risk because they don't care about life, they care about control, and they don't care about facts, they only care about feelings. Yes, thank you for reminding me, Jolie. Since I don't have a show tomorrow, and since tomorrow is Trucker John's birthday, I should give Trucker John a happy birthday song. So, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, Trucker John. Happy birthday to you, and many more. Anyway, so Jojo Bojo, no life's been rough. I'm 43 and my health isn't the best now. After losing weight, I think it's still too late. Damage done, getting done clean 7 years ago. I mean, but it's good you got clean. Better you got clean now than later, right? Earlier than later. Better sooner than later. But I understand everything that you've gone through. Trust me. I've been there, exactly where you were. So, exactly, pretty much. Thank you, Aaron. I did feel a little pitchy at the beginning, but I think I fixed it. See, impeccable living. I drink a whole pot of black tea every day, sometimes two. I do it right though. I use loose leaf Assam tea, local honey, and organic whole milk. It's so comforting. See, my problem is I like a little bit of brown water with my sugar. That's the only way I drink tea. So, Wolf Jarglbane. Is that like a Klingon name? Yes. Welcome, Wolf Jarglbane. So that looks Klingon. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but Kapla if it is. Anyway, so let's go ahead and I'm going to minimize the Blog Talk Radio thing for a second, and let's talk a little bit more about the debate though, because I do have the CBS News fact check. Vance claimed it's really rich for Democrat leaders to say Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January 20th. That's a bunch of bunk. We discussed that yesterday, but it's very important that people are reminded of the fact that Donald Trump absolutely did not turn over power peacefully. Clearly, he didn't turn over power peacefully. And when we go through the Jack Smith filing, which we'll do in a little bit, we'll see specifically many examples of how he did not hand over power peacefully. See, Wolf Jarglbane, D&D character Wolf Jarglbane. Fair enough. What classes and races is that character? Inquiring minds want to know. As a D&D nerd myself, who hasn't played D&D in a while. Vance, Iran, which launched the attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. The nuclear deal, known as JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, negotiated in 2015 while President Obama was still president, not done during the Biden administration. Trump pulled out of the deal because Trump pulls out of everything too early. probably because he finishes too early. By September 2019, Iran was pulling away from the accord and beginning to work on ways to enrich uranium for nuclear reactors more quickly. The $100 billion figure mentioned refers to potential sanctions relief, the unfreezing of Iranian assets if Iran completed key nuclear steps under JCPOA. Because the deal fell apart, assets are currently frozen. Additionally, White House archives cite the U.S. Treasury Department's estimate it's a little over $50 billion instead of $100 billion. Of course, what's $50 billion between enemies, right? However, a lot of the things that people don't understand is the fact is that when President Obama negotiated the deal with Iran to be able to get Iran back some of the assets that it itself had been frozen, the World Court basically was going to rule anyway that that money needed to be returned to Iran. So instead of having to deal with all the World Court issues and have the World Court say, well, you need to give the money back, we negotiated something and said, okay, y'all don't have to fight this in court, even though you're going to likely get it back anyway, but if for none of us to start giving you this money now, that's your money, we're going to have some requirements set up so that you don't continue your nuclear attempts. And because Donald Trump effed it over, now apparently we could be anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks away from Iran actually successfully developing a nuclear weapon. Why? Is it Biden's fault? No, it's Donald Trump's fault. But every conservative accusation is a confession. So, let's kind of scroll. I was reading an article where Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio, is angry at Vance and Trump over the Springfield lies. Of course he is, because he's making life more difficult on him as a governor for the municipalities like Springfield to be able to, they're inciting violence. You have Proud Boys marching down the streets of Springfield. You have hate crimes being done against Haitians who are here legally, and they don't care. JD Vance specifically said that he had no problem with making up lies just so it'll make the news. So, Wolfbite, the class is Human Thief Fighter Viking. Interesting. Very cool. We could talk about little nerdy stuff at the end of the show, I think. But I definitely have some interesting D&D characters that I've come up with over the course of the years. Easy. The point was we were going to normalize relations with Iran and avoid more bloodshed. Now Iran is getting worse. Exactly. And why is Iran getting worse? Because Donald Trump pulled out. Of course, if Donald Trump pulled out with other issues, we wouldn't have to deal with Don Jr. and Eric. So, false. Vance said Trump could have destroyed Obamacare. The only reason why Trump wasn't able to destroy Obamacare was because of 3 senators, including John McCain. So, let's see. Misleading claims. Vance claims DHS has effectively lost 320 children. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children missing, blah, 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 blah. Vance is likely referring to a report released by the Department of Homeland Security, Office of Inspector General in August. That report found that between fiscal years 2019 and 2023, roughly 32,000 unaccompanied children did not show up to their immigration court hearings. That period includes parts of Trump and Biden administrations. The report also said U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement had not yet issued court notices to about 291,000 unaccompanied children as of May 2024. Vance is likely adding the two numbers to argue that the federal government effectively lost hundreds of thousands of migrant children. Statistics do not reflect missing children. Unlike the Trump administration and its zero-tolerance border crackdown, the Biden administration had not implemented a policy to separate migrant children and their parents. So again, another lie from Vance. True, needs context. Walz claims border crossings down compared to when Donald Trump left office. In August, migrant apprehensions along the U.S. border numbered 58,038, according to Customs and Border Protection data. When Trump left office in January 2021, migrant apprehensions numbered 75,000 that month. Illegal border crossings have been steadily dropping since the spring, and the decline accelerated after Biden issued a proclamation on June 4th that banned most migrants from seeking asylum in the U.S.-Mexico border. Harris had said she would keep Mr. Biden's asylum crackdown if elected. However, yearly apprehensions at the southern border reached record highs during Mr. Biden's term, but they're down now, which is the point. False. Vance said Vice President Harris became appointed border czar. That is not true. We've covered that already on the show. Vance claims housing unaffordable because millions of illegal immigrants compete with Americans for scarce homes. Research indicates that a growth in immigration under Biden is one factor fueling housing demand. However, the housing shortage in the U.S. is of an estimated 1.5 million to 7 million housing units has been a long-standing issue since the Great Recession, when the number of homes being built plummeted. Fewer new homes were built in the 10 years ending in 2018 than any decade since 1960s. Mostly true. Walz claims when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Details: Iran carried out missile strikes on Iraq's Al-Assad air base in January 8th of 2020, days after Trump administration ordered a lethal drone strike on IRGC Commander Qasem Soleimani. On January 17th, U.S. Central Command said 11 service members were transported out of Al-Assad after being screened for a traumatic brain injury. President Trump at the time first said that there were no injuries, then later referred to them as headaches and a couple of other things, which was not traumatic brain injury. So, Walz was basically mostly true on that one. False. Walz claimed he was in China during Tiananmen Square protest. I don't know why this thing is such a big deal. He misspoke. Let's move on. True. Walz claims that former Trump White House Chief of Staff John Kelly called Trump the most flawed human being he ever met. So that's true. So true. Walz claims Vance has in the past said that there's a climate problem and that Trump has called climate change a hoax. So there you go. He was true. Partially true. Walz claims patients had to pay $800 for insulin before the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. A handful of researchers tried to estimate the cost of different insulin medicines. $96 a year, $8 a month. Biden administration said the list for a 30-day supply was $495. However, those list prices do not reflect myriad confidential markups and rebates that muddy the actual price that individual insurers and patients pay. Of course, because healthcare is a scam. Needs context. Walz claims Project 2025 makes it hard to get contraception and access to fertility treatments. Details: Project 2025 does not call for a registry of pregnancies, although it does kind of does. This is where the fact checkers are kind of Project 25 calls for Health and Human Services to use every available tool, including the cutting of funds, to ensure state reporting is conducted. This would be measures included in project's policies that could make it more difficult to access contraception. Project 2025 calls for the restoration of Trump's religious and moral exemptions to the contraceptive mandate, yada yada yada. So, but again, we will have to go into that a little more deeper in the Project 2025 document to actually go over how exactly they're wording it. And sometimes this is what I talked about on Monday, that sometimes fact checkers can be overly pedantic when we can read between the lines and understand what stated policies will actually do. I'm cold. I wish Liberal Dan were here in my apartment to keep me warm. I'm a furnace. Even when I was smaller, I'm a big. People would say that I was a furnace. I generate a lot of body heat, so I would definitely keep you warm. That's a true statement. Project 2025 is also against IVF, right? We'll have to go into that, but there's a problem. Conservatives have a problem with IVF, and they have a problem with stating their problem with IVF, because many conservatives believe that anything that discards a created embryo is morally akin to an abortion. So if you have embryos in a petri dish that are frozen that get discarded after the whole IVF process, even though 30% minimally of all naturally created embryos are discarded naturally, and they don't bat an eyelash at that, even though if the embryo it deserves the same protection as a born child, as they think, putting an embryo in a situation where it has a 30% chance of death. If I put an infant in a place where they had a 30% chance of death, I would be arrested for child endangerment. So I don't quite get their logical argument here. And people with issues like, endometriosis and other types of situations that make it harder for people to get impregnated, it will likely cause more embryos to be discarded naturally. So why wouldn't you want to why wouldn't you want them to participate in an action that lowers the amount of embryos that are created and discarded, even though some will eventually be discarded, as happens in the natural biological processes of natural childbirth and child creation, fertilization, implantation, etc. See, Walz claimed Trump hasn't paid taxes for 15 years. Before becoming president in 2016, Trump declined to disclose his tax return. In 2022, New York Times article reported he had paid no income taxes in 10 of the previous 15 years. So, oh no. He said 15 years, and it's really 10 of those 15 years. Oh no. False. Vance claims that prescription drugs are up under 7% under Biden, but under Trump they went up just 1.5%. The latest figures from the Agency of Healthcare Research says that that's false, went up 9% under Trump. However, measured by a median instead of mean, expenditures per person per prescription medicines among people who paid for prescriptions has largely declined under both Trump and Biden administrations since 2018. But of course, median isn't necessarily the best thing to look at, perhaps in these situations, because the median person may not very well have to take as much medicines as the people on the higher side of the median, right? It's easy network. Vance never mentions religious freedom in regards to Jews or Muslims, I notice. Well, because they don't care. He's running with an anti-Semite. Why would he say anything about that? Why? Bicycle Mike, I agree with you. Religious has no business in politics. Unfortunately, it is. And until we get rid of the American Taliban, i.e. the religious Reich, we're going to have to continue with that sort of thing. Yeah, MJ Daniel, when the GOP talks religious freedom, what they mean is our religious beliefs and nothing else. Pretty much, they basically believe in their freedom and their freedom to not just practice their religion as they wish, but their freedom to push their religion on other people. That's the kicker. False. Vance claimed Harris has not invested in clean air, clean water, or climate policy. Partially true. Walz claims the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in nation history, 30% decrease in Ohio. Opioid deaths have fallen to the lowest levels in 3 years. CDC estimates 77,000 deaths linked to opioids like heroin and fentanyl, down 7% from a year before nationwide. The agency estimates 3,400 opioid deaths in March 2024, and just Ohio down 18%. So, okay, here's a little bit off. Misleading. Vance says Minnesota law says a doctor that presides over an abortion where a baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care. Details. Vance's statement omits key context about the law. In 2023, Walz signed the bill that updated the state law regarding medical care for infants, quote, born alive as a result of an abortion. Both the previous and updated laws state that an infant born alive shall be fully recognized as a human person and accorded immediate protection under the law. Previously, the law required medical professionals to take all reasonable measures to preserve the life and health of a human born alive infant. After the update, medical personnel are required to take all reasonable measures to care for the infant who is born alive. A change, advocates say, allows parents of infants not expected to survive to forego extraordinary and futile interventions. That's the key here. They want to basically say if you deliver an infant and the infant is gone die, you're not required to continue to try and save the life of somebody who's going to die. You can if you want to, but you're not required to, and that's a big difference. And I have no problem with that. Late-term abortions typically occur to save the mother's life or when families are facing situations where the fetus is unlikely to survive that long after birth. Minnesota Department of Health reported 8 infants born alive from 2019 to 2022. According to the records, 3 of those infants were classified as pre-viable or not developed enough to survive outside the uterus. 3 were provided comfort care as planned. 2 had fetal anomalies. So there you go. The anti-abortion types are not going to mention what those born alive infants and what their situations were. They're just going to say they were born alive and they're going to treat them all the same, even though in the cases that they're being discussed, they were not the same. And that was CBS's fact check of the debate, posted on CBS.com. And as we've seen full well that, basically it was mostly JD Vance saying a whole bunch of BS and not Walz. Walz had a couple of misstatements. Only one thing that was totally false, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But it was basically JD Vance throwing up a whole bunch of BS to the American public. So Walz is mostly right about opioid deaths, yes. And here's the thing. Yes, you're also not allowed to murder a born child in any state. Conservatives like to believe that infants are being put to death because the parent really didn't want to be a parent. Doesn't make any sense. If you're gestating for 8 months, 9 months, it means you want to be a parent. And the parents that are, and the people who are choosing to have an abortion after 22 weeks are people who are facing a gut-wrenching decision where they've probably already bought the crib, they've probably already bought baby clothes, they've probably already bought supplies, formula, diapers, and now they have to deal with the fact that they've all bought that for naught because the child that they were hoping to love and care for and provide for is now facing a fetal condition and potentially threatening the life of the person who's gestating at the time. And you need to be able to act as quickly as possible and to deal with these situations and not force the patients to wait until it becomes a dire situation. Trust doctors to do their job. And that's what Walz was saying all the damn time. Many times in the debate, we need to trust the doctors to do their jobs. Period. Easy E Network. Which one was totally false by Walz? The claim about Tiananmen Square. I kind of glossed over it because he may remember his timeline wrong or when he was there and when he wasn't there. And the conservatives are trying to make it into this big conspiracy when I don't understand why it would be a big conspiracy. Oh no, he got dates wrong. The ground's gonna, split apart and fracture into two, and everybody's gonna fall into the depths of the infernos of hell simply because Walz lied or got it wrong about his dates when he went to China or not. Like, I couldn't tell you what dates I went to Israel back when I was a 17-year-old kid. Doesn't mean I'm lying about it, right? So no woman is carrying a child for 9 months and go, you want to know the doc? I forget about it. Exactly. I make that point all the damn time to conservatives, and they don't care one bit. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Trying to scroll up a bit just to see anything I might have missed. Yeah, Spicy Dragon, if Vance wants to talk about misspeaking and flubbing words, we can point out all of Trump's. Of course he doesn't want to do that, but, he does, we all know all of the crazy things that Donald Trump has said, like, how the kidney has a special place in the heart, and all the other fun. The United States of America, he can't even pronounce the country he wants to run correctly. One of the crazy things that I've noticed, one of the things that from last night's debate that I basically came up with is the fact that, these people, including Vance, are trying to say, oh, Vice President Harris hasn't done any of these things in the last 3 or so years as vice president. But the things that they're saying that she didn't do, she didn't have the power to do as vice president. And maybe I can understand people who are not trying to have the office of vice president. Maybe I can understand they not understanding what the job of vice president is, especially the people who Donald Trump loves, i.e. the poorly educated that Donald Trump said he loves after the 2016 Nevada primaries. However, thing is this, JD Vance wants to be vice president. It's reasonable for us to, expect that he understands what the job duties of a vice president is, and clearly from the debate last night, he has no clue as to what the job duties of a vice president is. So, therefore, why would we want to elect him to be vice president? Simple as that. Let's see. The IRA and CHIPS and Science Act help reshore factories, as did BBB. Yep, true. Is an elective 9-month abortion illegal in almost every state? I mean, pretty much. There may be some states that don't specifically outlaw it, but again, it's one of those things where you're criminalizing something that never happens. Like, why are, conservatives will often tell me when I bring up fetal abnormalities and pregnancies that are a risk to the patient, risking death, risking sepsis, risking permanent physical injuries. Conservatives' arguments will typically be to me, well, those happen so few and far between, why are you worried about it? So I push the same thing back on them. If these situations are so few and far between, why are you trying to legislate around it? Why are you trying to criminalize things that are so few and far between? And probably if the people were doing the horrible, evil things that you claim that they're doing, you could probably prosecute them under different laws. So you don't need these laws, which create unnecessary burdens on doctors to try and prove that the abortion actions that they take to save the life and or health of the patients are valid under the law, because these laws are so poorly worded. They're so bad, so badly worded, that you can't know whether or not the action you're taking is actually a good one or not. So we can't allow these people to go with their new line, which is, oh, it's just, they're just committing malpractice. It's malpractice for them to deny these people who needed these procedures the procedures that they needed. No, it's not malpractice when the frickin' Attorney General of Texas tells hospitals specifically that you may not perform an abortion on this patient, or else it will be considered a crime. And then the Supreme Court rules and lies in their ruling as well. So, see, Wolf, why does MAGA think they will not be affected? Look at the no payroll tax, but both Fed sales tax and tariffs, they will lose their pay and not be able to fight it. Exactly. And again, that's why they're calling it a sales tax, because it's going to affect the prices of goods when you enact these tariffs on these items. Now, there could be arguments made about specific items, how specific items might be price elastic, and as such, their elasticity will determine how much cost can be passed on to an individual consumer. But let's say we did put a tariff on these goods, right? What are domestic corporations going to do? Oh, it costs so much for now these people to sell these items, so now I can raise my price even more, and it'll be cheaper than the brought in goods. So you're still going to raise prices on the American people, but instead of it going as a tariff, it's going to go into the pockets of the billionaires and millionaires who own all these businesses. So, Bicycle Mike agreed. Healthcare is a human right. Well, it should be. Unfortunately, it's not, because the health insurance companies fight tooth and nail to try and not have to cover certain things. I had the best healthcare of my life between the November or December of 2020 and March of this year, because I was covered under Medicaid for those months, because I didn't have a job at the end of the year and was able to get on the Affordable Care Acts, shoved me into Medicaid, and then when I started working a job with my current employer, and that job started paying me more than what I could qualify for Medicaid for, I immediately reported it to the Medicaid offices, and they were like, "Well, we're not canceling anybody now, but thanks for letting us know." And I continued to have Medicaid for 3 more years after that. So, and it was the best care I've ever gotten, not just because it was more affordable to me, but because I was able to get access to more and more. Like we had doctors. One of my wife's doctors specifically told her that she was sad to see all these people being kicked off of the Medicaid rolls at the end of last year. I got extended because I appealed, but she was sad to see all these people being dropped from the Medicaid rolls, because for the first time in her career, she was able to actually give people the aid and help and support that they needed medically to deal with the conditions that they're dealing with. And now that they're going to hop back on private insurance, she's not going to be able to do that, because insurance is going to fight like they did with me when it came to my Zepbound, because they didn't fill out the prior authorization properly, because you have to jump through hoops. Holy crap, it's Seha in the chat. Good to see you, Seha. I'm just doing, without the ACA here in Washington, I would be in trouble. So would many, many more. Hey, Stony Baker, MD, good to see you as well. Love how Vance says Israel and Ukraine would never happen under Trump a second time, though. Well, the reason that Ukraine might not have happened is because Donald Trump might have basically forced Ukraine to hand over property to Russia, or he would have fought in NATO for Ukraine joining NATO, and as such, it wouldn't have, I guess, made Putin angry, and Donald Trump does not want to make his boyfriend angry. Do. Would the Hamas attack have happened? I don't know. I think it may very well have, because the Hamas attack is partially, and we'll cover this on Monday, but the Hamas attack was done specifically because Trump gave Russia the intel on Israeli defenses. Russia gave that to Iran, Iran gave that to Hamas, and Hamas was able to perform its dastardly attacks on 10/7 of last year with that intel that they gained several hops away because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is partially responsible for the loss of lives in Israel on 10/7 as well. But he's also responsible for the loss of more lives in America because of his mishandling of COVID. To Stony Baker, I got banned again on YouTube comments. Trump was trashing Carter, and I said millions will pee on his grave till he floats. Well, I mean, supposedly with the Russian hookers, he might like that. He might like the showers of the golden variety, even in death. One more year, I'll be eligible for Medicare. I guess I'll find it if it's any good. You'll have to let us know. But, I mean, I was on Medicaid, not Medicare, but, you know, same difference. And in fact, if more people could enroll in Medicare, because right now Medicare is mostly, people over 65, right? Or depending on the rules, whatever the rules might be, or maybe 62, whatever it is. I didn't think you were that old, Trucker John. But the thing, these cat hairs are still bothering me from Rose walking all over me. The thing is that if you would let more people who are younger enroll into the Medicare rolls, then you're going to have a better overall results, because your pooling effect will be greater, and the high risk of people who are higher in age will be offset by the people who are younger and lower risk being insured by the same people, because that's how pooling effects work. But conservatives don't understand that. They'll use words like pools, but they don't understand actually how it works. So. This is 1 year plus a day. Trucker John, where have you been? Your birthday is all we talked about for days. He's been here. He was here the other day. We did sing Trucker John happy birthday if you missed it. Carter was the last truly religious POTUS. Perhaps. Probably. You're probably right. Alaresia, I'm on Medicare, but also with BCBS Federal. It's pretty good. Medicaid usually covers more dental eyeglasses. That's true. Check my mic volume. Oh, is this being stupid again? Let's check it out. Oh, probably got too close to the mic. Oh, we're at 68. So now we're at 96. Now we're at 100. Okay, that should be better. Hopefully it's better. You can get Medicare younger due to disability. You start on Medicaid, then they switch you over once you're considered permanently disabled. Fair enough. Easy E, they should let Jimmy Carter vote early just in case. That'd be great. Jimmy Carter votes in Georgia and Trump loses Georgia by 1 vote. So, thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you. All right, so let's go ahead and switch up what we're going to talk about. We were talking about the debate. We have 2 things to go through. There's a JD Vance dossier that we can go through, and there's also what was said in the court filings for Donald Trump in the United States versus Donald Trump. So we're going to scan through that a good bit. Let's increase the size of this a little more. The United States of America versus Donald Trump. The fact that we have this going on is another reason why Donald Trump shouldn't be elected president. Simply and plainly. The defendant asserts that he is immune from prosecution for his criminal scheme to overturn the 2020 presidential election because he claims it entailed official conduct. Not so. Although the defendant was the incumbent president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was a fundamentally private one. Working with a team of private co-conspirators, the defendant acted as a candidate when he pursued multiple criminal means to disrupt through fraud and deceit, the government function by which votes are collected and counted, a function in which he, the defendant, as president, had no official role. In Trump versus United States, the Supreme Court held that presidents are immune from prosecution for certain official conduct, including the defendant's use of the Justice Department in furthering his scheme. He was alleged in the original indictment and remanded to this court to determine whether the remaining allegations against the defendant are immunized. The answer to that question is no. The motion provides a comprehensive account of the defendant's private criminal conduct, sets forth the legal framework created by Trump in resolving immunity claims, applies the framework for, I'm sure when I say Trump, I think they means the Trump ruling, not Donald Trump himself, applies that framework to establish that none of the defendant's charged conduct is immunized because it is either unofficial or any presumptive immunity is rebutted, and the request the relief government seeks, which is at bottom of this, that the court determine that the defendant must stand trial for his private crimes as would any other citizen. Let's just scan through it, just going over the sections and what the sections say. Factual proffer: when the defendant lost the 2020 presidential election, he resorted to crimes to try and stay in office. With private co-conspirators, the defendant launched a series of increasingly desperate plans to overturn the legitimate election results in 7 states he had lost: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Quote, the targeted states. His efforts included lying to state officials in order to induce them to ignore true vote counts, manufacturing fraudulent electoral votes in the targeted states, attempting to enlist Mike Pence in this role as president of the Senate to obstruct Congress's certification by using the defendant's fraudulent electoral votes, and when all else failed, on January 6th, directing an angry crowd of supporters to the United States Capitol to obstruct the congressional certification. Fight like hell, as he said. The through line of these efforts was deceit. The defendants and co-conspirators knowingly false claims of election fraud. They used lies in furtherance of these conspiracies: a conspiracy to interfere with federal government function, a conspiracy to obstruct the official proceeding, and conspiracy against the rights of millions of Americans to vote and have their votes as counted. At its core, defendant's scheme was a private criminal effort. In his capacity as a candidate, the defendant used deceit to target every stage of the electoral process, which through the Constitution, ECA, and state laws includes the state's notification to federal government of the selection of the representative electors, yada, yada, yada. As set forth below, the defendant worked with private co-conspirators, including private attorneys, co-conspirator 1, 2, 3, and 5, private political operatives, co-conspirator 6, and P1. The defendants also relied heavily on private agents such as campaign employees, volunteers like campaign manager P2, deputy campaign manager P3, senior campaign advisor P4, and campaign operative P5. I wonder why those names are redacted when you kind of can know who they are. See, Dan, take it easy on the losing by 1 vote. I did just that in my last city council election. My 2 kids forgot to vote. Oof. That sucks. He should be locked up, not running for president. True, but as I say in my intro now, used to say in my intro that he could be elected president while sitting in a jail cell. Now I'm saying it's too late for him to see a prison cell before he gets elected, so which we did make sure he doesn't get elected, and then he can be locked up. In this section, government sets forth detailed facts supporting the charges against the defendant before addressing the next section, why none of this conduct is subject to immunity. The conduct set forth below includes the defendant's formation of conspiracies leading up to and following the 2020 presidential election, yada, yada, yada. Formation of the conspiracies. Although multiple conspiracies began after Election Day in 2020, the defendant laid the groundwork for his crimes well before then, leading to the election. The defendant's private and campaign advisors, including P6, then private citizen, and P2, the defendant's campaign manager, informed him that it would be a close contest and he would be unlikely to be finalized on Election Day, in part. So one of those is the Penguin. No, Penguin or Joker? I think it's Penguin. In part of because the time needed to process large numbers of mail-in ballots prompted by COVID-19. They also told the defendant that the initial returns on election night might be misleading, and that is that he might take an early lead in the vote count that would diminish the mail-in ballots as mail-in ballots were counted, because his own supporters favored in-person voting while Biden's supporters favored mail-in ballots. Privately, defendant told advisors, including P6, campaign personnel P7, a White House staffer and campaign volunteer, and P8, the vice president's chief of staff, that in such a scenario he would simply declare victory before all the ballots were counted and any winner was projected. Of course, that was not his idea. That was an idea pushed by, was it Moore, the Penguin guy? Publicly, the defendant began to plant the seeds for that false declaration. In the months leading up to the election, he refused to say that he would accept the election results, insisted that he could lose the election only by fraud, falsely claimed that mail-in ballots were fraudulent, and asserted that only votes counted election day were valid. For instance, on an interview on July 19th, 2020, asked if he would accept the results, he said, "We'll have to see," and it depends. July 30th, despite having voted by mail himself early in the year, the defendant suggested that widespread mail-in voting provided cause for delay in the election, tweeting, "With universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. It will be a great embarrassment to the USA. Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote." Of course, I've noticed that too when he was, when all of the Florida people were arguing that we shouldn't have mail-in votes, like, DeSantis, etc., Pizza Gates, Lil Diddy, and then driving through Florida at the time, there were tons of signs that said, "Hey, remember to send in your mail-in votes," because hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite. In an interview on August 2nd, the defendant claimed without any basis that there is no way that you can go through a mail-in vote without massive cheating. At a campaign event in Wisconsin on August 17th, the defendant told his supporters, "The only way we're going to lose if the election is rigged. Remember that." His acceptance speech at the RNC, he said that the only way they can take this election away from us is if it's a rigged election. On October 27th, during remarks during his campaign, the defendant said it would be very, very proper and very nice if a winner were declared on November 3rd instead of counting ballots for 2 weeks, which is totally inappropriate. I don't think that's by our laws. I don't believe that, so we'll see what happens. So yeah, he's a shithead, and he was planting the seeds, as we all know. We all saw that. It's not like that was hidden. We all know that happened. By October 2020, a private political advisor, Roger Stone, I guess the word I was looking for, who worked for the defendant's presidential campaign, began to assist with the defendant's re-election effort. I'm assuming P1 is Roger Stone. 3 days before Election Day, P1 described the defendant's plan to private gatherings of supporters. And what Trump's going to do is just declare a victory, right? He's going to declare a victory. That doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. Again, I'm pretty damn certain that's Roger Stone. I haven't looked this up. I haven't verified via any other news media that P1 is Roger Stone. I'm just saying that that's Roger Stone. And that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. And if it hasn't been released that P1 is Roger Stone, I'm pretty sure it will be. After explaining that Biden's, I don't know why, if he made those public statements, it's been reported by the news that what Roger Stone said to people, it's out there. Why do they have to redact P1 as Roger Stone, right? It doesn't make any sense, not one bit. Let's just do a search. Who is P1 in the Jack Smith indictment? I'm not seeing that specifically. Judge unseals special one. I don't know why the judge would need to feel that they need to. Let's just see if I can search that page for Stone. No, it's just ads that say Stone. I'm fairly certain, though. I'm pretty confident that P1 is Roger Stone. I think P1 is Stone, not Bannon. Because I remember we saw videos of Roger Stone saying that specifically. We can actually try and pull that one up. So let's do that. Come on. Let's load. Are we frozen? I think we froze for a second, but I think we're good now. Let's go ahead and push this over here for a second. We've muted it, so if anything comes up, we won't... let's go to YouTube. Let's go to... Because I didn't read through this whole document beforehand, so I didn't know to have this automatically ready, but we're going to pull this up now, and we're going to play... Roger Stone's comments. We should be able to find it very easily on YouTube. This is just taking forever to load, unfortunately. Let's delete that, and then we Roger Stone Trump claim victory. As we wait for it to load. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. All right, let's see. We're gonna skip the ad so you don't have to see the ad, and then let's fast forward. Try and find that real quick. They've chopped up the clips with lots of commentary, unfortunately, so let's see. Roger Stone, just say he's the winner. Let's do it that way. Put in the quote. Lots of interesting things that are not related to what I'm looking for are coming up. Anyway, maybe we'll try and find that later. We're not going to worry about it too much now. All right, so let's go back to the immediately following Election Day. The defendant did exactly that. As his private campaign advisors predicted to him, in certain states, the defendant took an early lead before it began to erode. At approximately 11:20 p.m., Fox News projected that Biden would prevail in the state of Arizona. According to campaign advisor P4, he and the defendant were shocked and angry. As Election Day turned to November 4th, the contest was too close to project a winner, and in discussions about what the defendant should say publicly, senior advisors suggested that the defendant should show restraint while counting continued. Two private advisors, however, advocated a different course, suggested the defendant just declare a victory. At about 2:20 a.m., the defendant gave televised remarks to a crowd where he falsely claimed, without evidence or specificity, that there had been fraud and that he had won. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win the election. Frankly, we did win the election. We did win this election, is what he said. In the immediate post-election period, while the defendant claimed with fraud without proof, his private operative sought to create chaos, yada, yada, yada. And we pretty much know all the chaos that they did if we followed January 6th. Contrary to the defendant's public claims of victory, his advisors informed him he would likely lose on November 7th in a private campaign meeting, included P2 through 4 and 9. Campaign staff told the defendant he only had a slim chance of prevailing, that any potential success was contingent on the defendant winning all ongoing vote counts or litigation in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Within a week of that assessment, the defendant's campaign conceded its litigation in Arizona, meaning that based on his campaign advisor's previous assessment, the defendant had lost the election. Yada, yada, yada. So we all know what Donald Trump did. B, the defendant knew that his claims of outcome determinative fraud were false. He did know that. He even said recently that he lost. He admitted that he lost. So there you go. So let's skedaddle past this, because I think there's other things that are important to read in this thing. Ultimately, the defendant's steady stream of disinformation in the post-election period culminated in the speech that he gave privately funded, privately organized rally at the Ellipse, and that's very important, that it's privately funded and privately organized. Because it was privately funded and privately organized, it therefore establishes that it is not an official act. The morning of January 6, 2021, in advance of the official proceeding, which Congress was to certify the election, in his speech, the defendant repeated the same lies about election fraud in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. The defendant used these lies to inflame and motivate the large angry crowd of his supporters to march on the Capitol and disrupt the certification proceeding. Defendant aimed at deceit at targeting states to alter their ascertainment and appointment of electors. We all know about everything that was done in Arizona. Let's scan down more. We know what was done in those places. We know what was done in Georgia. We know just find the votes, count the votes, blah, blah, blah. The threats made against Roethlisberger or whatever his name is. I always want to call him Roethlisberger, like the quarterback of the Steelers. I think it's Roethlisberger though. Or maybe somehow pronouncing it differently. I don't know. Keep scrolling. Keep scroll. We don't need to look at every single page of the document. Michigan, yes, we know. The chicanery in Michigan. So we're going to have to pass through all the other states as well. Nevada. All the bullshit he did in Nevada. All the bullshit he did in Pennsylvania. Yada, yada, yada. All the bullshit he did in Wisconsin. Voting machines in several states. Throughout the post-election period, the defendant and co-conspirators repeatedly made claims about the security and accuracy of voting machines, despite the fact that they were on notice that the claims were false. It's probably one of the reasons why Fox News got sued, and successfully, I might add. Well, Fox News also had to say that, that their claims against the voting machine companies were incorrect. We're trying to get to the next part. There's nothing. It's really hard to find what page. Let's see. The defendant organizes and causes electors to submit fraudulent certificates, creating the false appearance that states submitted competing electoral slates. By late November 2020, every effort, both legitimate and illegitimate, that the defendant had made had been unsuccessful. The defendant campaign and their allies had lost or withdrawn, blah, blah, blah. So they did the fraudulent elector plan. We all know about the fraudulent elector plan, so we can skip past that. See. Scroll. Because I do want to get to the JD Vance thing as well. December 12th, co-conspirators 1, 5, and 6 and others held a conference call organized by the campaign to placate the defendants' Pennsylvania electors. Co-conspirator 1 falsely assured them that their certificates of the vote would be used only if the defendants succeeded in the litigation. It's funny, like, during the call, some of the defendants, conspirators, and agents exchanged text messages. P5 wrote, "Whoever selected this slate should be shot." So if we do a Trump, if we search up Trump and, well, I want this typed properly. Whoever selected this slate should be shot. Let's see, that is something from the New York Times. Let's just see. Maybe Google will give us better results. I don't know. It should be easy to find that thing, but apparently my search through is bad on that one. But I mean, it would be if you could go through all the things that we have been reported about with the news, especially in things that are cited, you should be able to figure out who all of these people, persons, and co-conspirators are, right? I mean, so why redact them when you could probably have people go through these redactions and be like, oh, well, this person said this, this, and this. That means this person must be this. So that's why I'm 100% certain that person is Roger Stone. That P1 is Roger Stone. I am. If I'm wrong, I'll say so on the podcast, because I, unlike a conservative, will admit that I'm wrong when I'm wrong. However, my issue is that I remember Stone being shown that seeing a Stone audio where he said specifically those things, so therefore we all know that it was Roger Stone. On December 14th, P1 podcast focused on spreading lies about the defendant's fraudulent electors, including the false claim that their votes were merely a contingency in the event the defendant won legal challenges. Of course, they've redacted. So 314 is here, GA7171979, and it's redacted, so you can't see what the podcast was. But we do know Roger Stone had a podcast. So the defendants attempted to persuade Pence to reject votes cast by duly appointed electors and choose the defendant's fraudulent ones. We all know that. We all know he demanded that. Pence even asked Dan Quayle if Pence had the legal authority to do that. Dan Quayle said no. He should have said no, you idiot. Why would you think that? He also tweeted false claims. Time for Republican senators to step up and fight for the presidency like the Democrats would do if they had actually won. The proof is irrefutable. Massive late-night mail-in ballot drops in swing states, stuffing ballot boxes, double votes, dead votes, fake signatures, illegal immigrant votes, banned Republican vote watchers, more votes than actual voters. BS, all BS. We all know it's BS. Somebody was told that they were too honest. Not something you would be surprised to hear coming from the Donald Trump campaign. Although I guess I would be surprised that anyone at the campaign would be stated or be described as being honest. But I mean, maybe had a few people who weren't wanting to actually defraud the entirety of the American people. For his part, immediately upon leaving the meeting with Pence, the defendant traveled to Dalton, Georgia to speak at a political rally. At the invitation of 2 U.S. senators engaged in runoff elections there. During his political speech, the defendant promoted many of the same falsehoods. They said they're not taking the White House, blah, blah, we're going to fight like hell. And I'll tell you right now, I hope Mike Pence comes through for us. I have to tell you, I hope our great vice president comes through for us, of course. If he doesn't come through, I won't like him as much. And the same thing said, I think, on the January 6th, right before the people came from P Circle. Let's keep on scrolling down. The defendant caused unlawful conduct on January 6th and tried to take advantage of the riot that ensued. Defendant continued his intense pressure campaign against Vice President early hours of January 6th around 1 a.m. Defendant tweeted falsely, if Vice President Mike Pence comes through for us, we'll win the presidency. Many states want to decertify the mistake they made in certifying incorrect, whatever. No state wanted to do that. He asked Mike to send it back. Of course, Mike Pence wouldn't send it back because he doesn't have the authority to do so. Later that morning, co-conspirator 5 worked with another attorney for the defendant who contacted a U.S. senator to ask him to obtain the fraudulent Wisconsin and Michigan documents from the U.S. representative's office and hand-deliver them to the vice president. That could be Bannon. I think co-conspirator 5 may very well be Bannon. Or might be Giuliani. Who knows? Because it does say a fellow attorney, so that might be Giuliani, but I haven't decided on that one yet. At the Ellipse campaign rally, CC1 and CC2 spoke just before the defendant. In his rally speech, CC1 sought to cloak the conspiracies in an air of legitimacy, assuring the defendant supporters that every single thing that has been outlined in the plan for today is perfectly legal, introducing CC2 as the preeminent constitutional scholar who would further explain this plan. Again, if we know who spoke before Donald Trump in the rally, and we know what they're quoting them, why would you then have to redact who these people were? It's just bizarre. It's bizarre that you have to redact these things if you could find these things. Trump ellipse. Every single thing that has been outlined. Let's see if I spelled ellipse wrong, and it keeps wanting to do eclipse instead of ellipse. Of course, a lot of the things that are coming out in this sort of time is things that are coming. Hours later, Giuliani spoke to the Ellipse January 6th protesters, telling them every single thing that has been outlined as the plan for today is totally illegal. It's totally legal, I mean. So, there you go. Co-conspirator 1 is Rudy Giuliani. There's no reason there's no reason for them to hide that. We could easily search these things and find out that co-conspirator 1 is Rudy Giuliani. And then so we can search up Rudy Giuliani transcript ellipse January 6th speech transcript. This is where he wanted trial by combat. Let's go down. Let's find preempt constitutional scholar. Constitution. 1, 2, or let's find maybe scholar. John Eastman. Let's see. It's been a year, blah, 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 blah. So, John Eastman is probably co-conspirator 2. Co-conspirator 2. Rudy also is P something. I don't know if Rudy is P something. I think Stone is P1. Okay, according to CBS News, co-conspirator 1 may be Rudy Giuliani. I think we've confirmed that it's Rudy Giuliani because it's cited exactly what Rudy Giuliani said. And as I just said, co-conspirator 2 is possibly John Eastman. But yeah, if John Eastman spoke after Rudy Giuliani, then yes, co-conspirator 2 is John Eastman, and co-conspirator 1 is Rudy Giuliani. So why do you have to redact that if these things are so easily found? What? Co-conspirator 1 asserted Pence could decide on the validity of his crooked ballots, told the crowd, let's have trial by combat. Here we go. Here it is. He told, let's have trial by combat. We all know that Rudy Giuliani specifically stated that he wanted trial by combat. So why do you have to redact that he is co-conspirator 1 in this particular case? It's silly. It's absolutely silly. And I'm fairly certain that we absolutely know that John Eastman is the supposed constitutional scholar that spoke that was introduced by Rudy Giuliani. Bizarre. That's probably a good fat man rant. Why? Why do you have to redact it? So Giuliani was on The Masked Singer at the time and was singing Bad to the Bone. Therefore, for production value, had to redact his name from legal documents. I don't think the legal documents would care if Rudy Giuliani was on Masked Singer. Of course, I think some of the judges walked off of Masked Singer at that point. Either that or they walked off when Sarah Palin was one of the contestants. But either way. Beginning about 1:30, the defendant settled in a dining room of the Oval Office. He spent the afternoon reviewing Twitter on his phone while the dining room television played Fox News. At 2:13, the crowd in the Capitol broke into the building and forced the Senate to recess. Within minutes, Stafford fled to the Senate chamber carrying the legitimate electors' physical certificates. Next to the Senate chamber, a group of rioters chased a police officer up a flight of stairs to within 40 feet of where Pence was sheltering with his family. As they did so, the rioters shouted at the officer, where the F they at? Where the F they counting the votes at? Why are you protecting them? You're an effing traitor, blah, blah, blah. On the other side of the Capitol, the House was also forced to recess. Fox News coverage included at about 2:12 reports of the Capitol being on lockdown. 2:20 video crowds of the Capitol lawn in West Terrace are shown alongside a chyron stating certification vote pause as protests erupt on Capitol Hill. 2:21 an on-street reporter interviewed an individual marching from the ellipse to the Capitol who claimed to have come to Washington because President Trump told us we had something big to look forward to, and I believe that Vice President Pence was going to certify the electoral votes and or not certify them, but guess what? Things change, and it's a very big disappointment. I think there's several 100,000 people here who are very disappointed. I still believe President Trump has something else left. At approximately 2:24, Fox News reported that a Capitol police officer may have been injured and that protesters had made their way inside the Capitol. At 2:24, Trump was alone in his dining room where he issued a tweet attacking Pence and fueling the riot. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what he should have been done to protect our country and Constitution. USA demands the truth. That afternoon, at the Capitol, a rider used a bullhorn to read the defendant's tweet about Vice President aloud to the crowd trying to gain entry to the Capitol building. The defendant issued the incendiary tweet about Pence despite knowing, as he would later admit in an interview in 2023, his supporters listened to him like no one else. 1 minute later, the Secret Service was forced to evacuate Pence to a secure location at the Capitol. Throughout the afternoon, members of the crowd chanted, "Hang Mike Pence, where's Pence, bring him out," and Traitor Pence. On March 13th, 2023, he said, had Mike Pence sent the votes back to the legislatures, they wouldn't have had the problem with January 6th. So in many ways, you can blame him for January 6th. Rioters again. Many bearing pro-Trump paraphernalia included, indicating their allegiance, breached the Senate chamber, yada, yada, yada. Some of the worst violence today took place outside the Capitol. One Metropolitan police officer said, "I feared for my life the moment I got into that. We were walking into the crowd. Officer described the riders he encouraged at the Capitol were wearing both tactical gear and Trump paraphernalia and were fueled by sheer anger. In the years after January 6th, the defendant has reiterated his support and allegiance for the riders who broke into the Capitol, calling them patriots and hostages and providing them with financial assistance and reminiscing about January 6th as a beautiful day." At a rally in Waco, Texas on March 25th, 2023, the defendant started the tradition he has repeated several times, opening the event with a song called Justice for All, recorded by a group of charged and in many cases convicted January 6th offenders known as the January 6th Choir. Oh. There was something I did see on this that I wanted to, that I believe I've seen. I might have to scroll back to the beginning real quick. Legal framework. In Trump, the Supreme Court held that former presidents are immune from prosecution for official acts. In Trump, the Supreme Court announced principles that govern a president's claim of constitutional immunity. Supreme Court divided presidential acts into three categories: core conduct, other presidential acts, presumptive immunity, and unofficial conduct for which the president has no immunity. With respect to the first category of core additional conduct, when the president's authority to act is conclusive and preclusive, Congress may not regulate his actions, and the president has absolute immunity from criminal prosecution. Applying those principles to the original indictment, the Supreme Court concluded that the defendant is absolutely immune from prosecution for the alleged conduct involving his discussions with Justice Department officials and his threatened removal of the acting Attorney General. Threshold here is whether defendants can carry his burden to establish blah, blah, blah. If a president's actions constitute non-core official presidential conduct, he is at least presumptively immune. The government can overcome this presumptive immunity by demonstrating that applying a criminal prohibition to the act would pose no dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch, just as the inquiry into whether or not conduct is official or unofficial is necessary fact-bound. Trump, so too, should be the inquiry as to whether the presumption of immunity is rebutted. The analysis should first identify the specific alleged act and determine whether or not the criminal liability is there. Lots of legalese. None of the allegations or evidence is protected by presidential immunity. At its core, the defendant's scheme was a private one. He extensively used private actors and his campaign infrastructure to attempt to overturn the election results and operated in a private capacity as a candidate for office to the limited extent that the superseding indictment and proffered evidence reflect official conduct. However, the government can rebut the presumption of immunity because relying on that conduct in his prosecution will not pose a danger of intrusion of the authority of the functions of the executive branch. Boom, there you go. I wonder if the Supreme Court will agree if this ever does make it to it. Defendant's interaction with Pence. The only conduct alleged in the initial indictment that the Supreme Court held was official and subject to at least a rebuttable presumption of immunity was the defendant's attempts to lie and pressure Pence to misuse his role. The Supreme Court stated that whenever the president and vice president discuss their official responsibilities, they engage in official conduct, and further explained that because Pence's role at the certification was a constitutional and statutory duty of the vice president, the defendant was at least presumptively immune from the prosecution for the conduct. Accordingly, unlike all the other threshold determinations the court will have to make about whether the defendant's conduct alleged in superseding indictment was official, with respect to the defendant's conversation with Pence about Pence's official role, the court can skip to the second step, whether the government can rebut presumption, yada, yada, yada. They believe they overcame whatever. Let's just kind of scroll down just to... because a lot of this is just probably stuff that probably even go over my head, let alone people who are non-legalese folks. President's interactions with Pence as a running mate run official. That's a decent point. So if you interacted with him as a running mate and not as vice president, therefore it's not an official protected act. P58 one-on-one interactions with CC2 were unofficial. Pence staffer P58 also participated in January 5th meeting with co-conspirator 2, i.e. Giuliani. Right? That was Giuliani? No, 2 is John Eastman. That's right. 1 is Giuliani. Let's scroll back to the top, because I think there was something on the top that I might have missed over or went over that something I wanted to cover, and we'll probably go over the end of this. But basically, this is a damning document, but it's also, there's some silliness to it, and so why is it redacted? Why are certain things redacted? Because it's easy stuff that we could find on our own. Maybe that's the case. Maybe they just don't want to, maybe they don't want to open themselves to any people saying that the courts were acting incorrectly, that they had to redact it, but in which case the redactions are silly because we all know who co-conspirator 1 and 2 are. Let's see. All of it. Anyway, I'm not worried about skipping that. Aren't you glad you don't have Jack Smith's job? Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I have. There was discussions at some point that I should have been, that I would have liked to have been. Oh, we got someone on the phone. I'm sorry. I haven't been looking at the thing. But there are some things. We'll get to in a second before we jump over to the JD Vance dossier, if you will. But I was interested as a high schooler to be like, maybe I should go be a lawyer. And my mom said, you don't have the killer instinct to be an attorney, so I dropped it and let it go. Then, of course, later on in life, my mom once asked me, why did you never become a lawyer? And I'm like, because you told me not to. You pushed me away from that goal. So... Did Tim and JD have anything besides a pad of blank paper and a pen at their debate podiums? My boyfriend is sitting here saying they had tablets and earpieces. I think he's delusional. I don't know what the officials' rules were on that, but I'm very certain that if it follows the same rules as the presidential debate, that they were only allowed to have empty, non-written on pads, no notes provided prior, and there would clearly be no earpieces. Although I did joke yesterday that while doing the live reaction to the debate, that specifically maybe Tim Walz did have an earpiece and was listening to Liberal Dan Radio, because some of the things that I said, he said shortly thereafter. We can pop this back over here for a second. Let's just see. CBS VP debate rules. Oh, there's the actually one I wanted to see. How the debate rules will work for Vance 2024 showdown. There will be no opening statements. Will there be an audience? No audience. How long will candidates have closing statements? Will candidates get questioned in advance? Candidates will not receive questions in advance. Campaign staffers are not permitted to interact with Walz and Vance during breaks, and candidates are not allowed to have props or pre-written notes on the stage. They will be given a pen and a pad of paper and a bowl of water. So no, there is no ability to communicate. There should have been no ability for the candidates to communicate with their staff, and there's also no pads of paper that had pre-written notes on them. So there you go. Let's see. I'd love to be on that show. Let's find out which B-list celebrity is ending their career tonight. Take it off. We used to watch the Masked Singer a good bunch. I immediately knew when it was Wayne Brady. Wayne Brady started singing, and I was like, that's Wayne Brady. I know that's Wayne Brady. You can't fool me. That's Wayne Brady. And everyone kept on saying everybody else was Wayne Brady, and I was like yelling at my TV. That is Wayne Brady, MFers. That has to be Wayne Brady. And the only people I got that quickly, or just about as quickly, was when whatchamacallit, what was it? Wilson Phillips were on there as well, and they said there was some note or some statement early on in their presumption, in their introduction, about them holding on or something like that. I'm like, well, that has to be Wilson Phillips. And then they sang, and it was clearly Wilson Phillips. And I was like, this is Wilson Phillips. No way around it. There are other people who I guessed accurately at some point during the show, like T-Pain. I correctly said it was T-Pain because I actually went and looked it up. And it was like, I wanted to look up an example of T-Pain singing without the auto-tune. And it was clearly T-Pain. And I don't think people got that. There's some weird examples where they guess the people right, and it's like, how the hell did you guess that person? I don't understand that. It was a fun show to watch, but I haven't watched it in a few seasons. So Whisper Mason. And now the Patriot Tabernacle Choir will sing, I'm having your baby. That's hilarious. What's this whole rent people until they prove themselves worthy of buying? What are you talking about? I must have missed it. I missed a good chunk of the chat, I suppose. See, not really down. I can't hear his voice right now. I left Boston Brian last night when he came on and watched a debate on Bulwark and listened to Dan's commentary. Well, you should always listen to my commentary, right? Oh wow, Jeff, you had a heart transplant from a 24-year-old girl killed in a car crash. That's crazy. Do you know where, Jeff? Do you know where that person came from? And when did that happen? Like, do you know who was the person who donated the heart to you? Like, do you know their family? I mean, technically, we are paid slave wages, I guess, with the whole renting people versus buying people thing. But, you know, it is what it is, right? All right, let's go to our... Is this Brother Michael from overseas? Hello? Are you there, caller? Hello, hello, caller. Did I take too long to get to you? We'll come back to you. Caller was not there. Maybe caller was off in the can or something like that. We'll go back in a few seconds. I mean, let's go back to talk about the other thing. That's 9:52. Wow, it's almost 10 o'clock. Just let's do a show reset before we go to the next topic. Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. Mondays and Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central, here at liberaldanradio.com and twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. If you're listening live on Blog Talk Radio, the best thing to do is to come into the chats at liberaldanradio.com or twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. That way we can see your comments there, because I don't follow the chat on Blog Talk Radio much, if at all. Typically because of the fact that Blog Talk Radio too often craps the bed, and therefore I don't really want to have to worry about dealing with that on top of anything. But there's nobody in that chat at that moment anyway, because I wanted to go check. Caller must be Paula Poundstone. Wow. Yes, you can support the show, become a patron, patreon.com/liberaldan or patreon.liberaldan.com. Either way gets you there. You can Venmo Liberal Dan. You could buy me a cider, go to liberaldan.com, click the buy me a cider button, or go to buymeacoffee.com/liberaldanradio to make a one-time contribution to the show. You can do super chats and super stickers on YouTube. You can buy bits on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can support the show for free by subscribing over there with your Amazon Prime account. Otherwise, you can just pay the normal cost if you want to subscribe over there. If you want to become a liberal Danimal, you can also do that on YouTube, as little as $2 a month. Some of the plans are even more. At some point, I might adjust who gets to see what when it comes to early release of bits and early release of other stuff. But as of right now, anything that I choose to put from members only to public, all members at this point get that. So. And of course, the free ways to do it, remember to like the stream, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, get your other friends to subscribe to the channel, get other viewers. I'd love to be able to get to the point where we have like hundreds of viewers. Hey, Aaron, Liberal Danimal for 9 months. Appreciate you, as always. I don't think there's a day where I don't appreciate the members of my mod squad. So, I'd love to be able to get to the point where, like, you know, Tommy, i.e. my dude, or Boston Brian, and all the other folks. I mean, I don't expect to get to Hal's level anytime soon, but I'd love to be able to get to multiple thousands of people who have subscribed to and followed the YouTube channel, and we're getting hundreds of viewers a day at any given time, or even thousands of viewers at any given time, instead of, you know, what we do have. Of course, I love the quality of people that we have in the chat at all times. I'm just trying to get this thing to grow and become more successful, because I think the more successful it becomes, the more truth we get to spread across the interwebs, if you will. So, yes, happy Daniversary, Joe. That's an awesome way to put it. Happy Daniversary. Even neoliberals think people that don't work for others deserve to be homeless and starve. That's definitely not me. I think everybody deserves to eat, be able to eat, have a place to live, be able to have clothing on their back. That's why I support a universal basic income. So, yes, you do know the family. Interesting. Oh, she was from Grace Lake, Illinois. I was just wondering because I actually know my ex-girlfriend's brother and sister-in-law had a young child who I knew when I was still dating them, but she was still very, very little, who died in a car accident a few years back. And I would have thought, I mean, the odds of that being the same person would have been astronomical, but it would have been interesting if that would have been the case. So, if Harris mentions the middle class one more time, I'll puke. Why? Why will you puke? I mean, bringing up the middle class is a vital portion of our economy. That doesn't mean that the people who are in the working class, the blue collar workers, should be ignored. They of course need to be supported. But we used to have, more people in our society that could elevate themselves, and elevating yourself to the middle class maybe used to be a goal that people would have in order to be able to get advance in life. And if they erode the middle class to where doesn't exist, then that gives people less hope that they'll be able to elevate themselves from surviving. But of course everybody should be able to simply survive, and that's my point, is that we should all be able to simply survive. So Steve, let's see. I shouldn't have bitched about it again. He dismissed Brand. He said he should F off because no one cares what he thinks because he's a Brit. I'm a Brit and have been here for 2 years. Impeccable living. Woo, I'm white girl drunk. What are you drinking? Are you drinking White Claw? Or are you drinking, what are you drinking, Impeccable living? What's the drink of choice tonight? I want to know. I think I missed him talking about Russell. I was too busy when he was doing commentary on Russell Brand. I was too busy talking about how Russell Brand says angel dust. I think I was watching Russell Brand's version of Arthur, but I think that's right. And he was talking about, it was either Arthur or some other movie that came around the same time, and they were talking about drugs or whatever, and he was talking about like marijuana or PCP. And I looked at my wife and I was like, I really want him to say angel dust. And then like 2 seconds later, he goes, oh, and we can have some angel dust or something to that effect. And I was like, yes, I got it right. So, you don't like music. Yes, the poor middle class who can still afford homes. I mean, I got in my home earlier. I think I'm probably qualify as middle class. And, I was able to get my home before, I guess, things elevated and home ownership became more problematic. However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, look after the middle class. Everybody who is below the upper class should be united together to fight against the economic oppressors, if you will. Why 90 seconds? This is 2 hours. That's only 2 hours, not 3 hours. Blog Talk Radio is so horrible sometimes. We need housing for everybody, I would say. I don't think Vice President Harris is saying anything about that the people who are in the working class. I don't think she's saying at all that they don't need it. In fact, I think she wants to help the people who are in the working class, the blue collar workers, to be able to afford houses, to be able to get themselves into a situation where they could elevate themselves into, quote, the middle class. So, well, thank you, Wolf Jarl Cobain. Thank you for joining. I hope you come back again. Please remember to subscribe if you've not already done so. The Scots Irish are the best of all. I have some Scots and Irish in me. Impeccable living. Do you have Scots and Irish in you? Or have you? Have you had Scots and Irishmen in you? I guess that should be the question. I'm drinking white wine, a nice dry Viognier. Is that how it's pronounced? I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. I'm not a big wine aficionado. So, can't really say. No, it's not 10 seconds. We have a whole hour. Blog Talk Radio fake Siri voice. Screw you, Blog Talk Radio person. Man, I think that window disappeared even. Oh, no, it's still there. Scots and those Canada peeps. Yes, crazy Canadians. My wife once said crazy Canadians about the fact that Canada has bagged milk, and that got her a 3-day Facebook suspension, which is hilarious. Hey, Alton Gillespie, good to see you. Thank you for just stopping by the show. Anyway, let's go ahead and go over... I think if we just look over all of the stuff in the dossier that's just and I can put a link to the page where I got the dossier from right there. I'll put it in both chats. That's the place where I got the dossier from. Let's go ahead and flip on over to my alternate screen. Research dossier, JD Vance, updated February 23rd, 2024. Table of contest, executive synopsis, dossier notes, potential vulnerabilities, potential opposition narrative, anti-Trump record and establishment ties, potential opposition narrative, questionable conservatism, top hits, political, anti-Trump record and establishment ties, questionable conservative, notable vulnerabilities with moderates, personal information, election results, campaign finance, voting records, election records, so we can go under some of that, public compensation records, military records, lobbying records, criminal records, traffic citations, police records, real property records, that looks redacted, bankruptcies, judgments, liens records, small claims, legal issues, business records, JD Vance Enterprises, JDE Enterprises Investments, NARIA Capital Management, NARIA Capital Fund, NARIA Capital GP, nonprofit records, our Ohio Renewal Foundation, his attorney's license, personal finance disclosure, Vance's anti-Trump record and establishment ties. Vance was opposed to Trump's candidacy during the 2016 election. As early as August 2016, Vance announced his intention to vote third party as opposed to voting Trump. Vance was accused of effectively voting for Hillary Clinton during the campaign and after the... Why were they trying to win him with us, I guess? Vance criticized Trump's statements and policy proposals, and now he supports them. Vance said Trump election would be terrible for the country. I guess he was right about that. Vance compared Trump to heroin and mocked MAGA as a quick high. Vance called Trump dangerous. Vance said voters were not attached to Trump and he would get crushed. Vance wrote that he loathed Trump, obvious personal character flaws, said he fought against Trump, said he was a bad 2016 candidate, said we have to reject the rhetoric of Trump. After the 2016 election, Vance said he did not think Trump fully appreciated the complexity of what's going on. Vance criticized Trump for creating finger-pointing among white working class. Not just the working class, but the white working class. Impeccable living. I've been with two Brits and Italian, not at the same time, sadly. Well, I'll think good thoughts for you. Maybe one day. Believe in yourself, and one day it might happen. Vance's real estate broker must be going on Masked Singer soon. Hilarious. On October 16th appearance on the Charlie Rose Show, Vance declared he was never a Trump guy, never liked him. Vance claimed there was a willingness from people who think a lot like I do to say Trump is going to be a terrible candidate, and that if you were an idiot if you voted for him. Vance said Trump was not the best candidate for white working class voters, specifically white working class voters. Interesting. Let's just go to 79 for a second just to see if they have the actual quote. Vance said that Trump was not the best candidate for white working class voters. JD Vance, absolutely. You think about the slogan, Make America Great Again. The implication is that America isn't great right now, but if you're unhappy about your life, that's going to resonate. Charlie Rose, do you think that this is a large number of people? Do you think this is enough to people to elect Donald Trump? JD Vance, no. I don't think it's large enough to elect Donald Trump. Obviously, the demographics of the country have changed a lot, and the white working class community is still a pretty significant part of the electorate, but it's not merely enough to let Donald Trump alone. So my fear is, I think Donald Trump is not the right candidate for this group of voters who would have been, well, I don't know if there was a single candidate who really appealed to those voters in any way. One, inspired them, and two, actually set a set of policies that would have been good for them, either on the Democratic or Republican Republican side. Part of the problem with the election is, in fact, that I think the problems are unique to some of the working class communities, don't get a lot of attention, and maybe, hopefully the book will raise people's awareness a bit. I guess it's his book. Let's go back to page 4. Jeff Curry, has anyone been watching The Anonymous? I have not watched The Anonymous. Sorry. Let's see. During the 2016 campaign, Vance linked racism and xenophobia to Trump's base of support. In 2016, Vance said people who might be described as, if not as racist, at least expressing some sort of racial resentment. In 2016, Vance said there are people who were drawn to Trump because he says racially insensitive things. Basically, a toned-down version of Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables. Janelle, Rudy should always wear a mask. One would hope, right? 2018, Vance was still an opponent of Trump, citing his race-related policies. Vance has suggested there was no sign of voter fraud in 2016. There's no evidence of it. He said that in 2016. Vance once implied that Trump is prone to lying. Well, I mean, duh. Vance appeared to be, now he's embraced the lies because he completely shares the lies about the eating the dogs and eating the cats, specifically because he's okay with lying about it if it gets people talking about other issues. Early in the presidency, Vance said that Trump is failing on his legislative priorities. Vance at times appeared dismissive of his efforts. So he's critical of Trump, so there you go. Vance has been previously described as a moderate with Democrat tendencies. Vance has previously heaped praise upon Hillary Clinton. Vance has previously heaped praise on Barack Obama. So I guess this is the report that they were trying to use to try and convince Trump to not pick Vance. I don't know. Or maybe they just, because he's so bad, maybe they wanted him on his side so he wouldn't go to the other side. I don't know. Vance said, I was really happy with the policy, and so that's what caused me to be a Trump supporter. Trump attacked Trump's ban from social media outlets. Vance's questionable conservatism. Vance once admitted that working class Americans benefit from Democrat policies. Vance once criticized Trump's core domestic policy priorities. This guy, there's clearly many examples of JD Vance not supporting Trump. So the fact that he's now supporting Trump shows that he is a hypocrite. He's not the hypocrite of the week this week because that was Jeff Carrere. But Vance appears to support higher taxes for individuals without children. He has said that. Vance has previously signaled support for distorting the free market with federal subsidies. Vance has questioned conservatives for prioritizing American businesses. Vance has been critical of free market economic policy. Opponents could suggest that Vance is hypocritical for his criticism of big tech. Vance opposed the Trump administration's efforts to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Vance has previously indicated some hesitation concerning school choice initiatives. Well, hey, be louder about that. That'd be awesome. But no, he's not going to be louder about that now because now he's on the Trump bandwagon. He's jumped the Trump Kool-Aid. Trump was critical of Trump's suggestion to build a southern wall. Vance was critical of Trump's proposed travel ban. Vance previously blamed U.S. businesses on the border crisis. Well, okay, I can agree with him there too. Vance has previously taken positions that undermine the religious right. Vance attacked the 2012 GOP candidates for missing the mark on evolution. Vance criticized GOP presidential candidates opposed to the federal marriage amendment, which he said would rip apart new families. Vance criticized the Trump administration for the airstrike that killed Qasem Soleimani. Vance has made controversial remarks concerning Chinese patriotism. Vance appears to have flip-flopped on his support for the Iraq War. Vance appears to have embraced non-interventionism. Vance has been once the chief obstructionist to U.S. efforts to provide assistance to Ukraine. Okay, so he's gone basically from he hates Trump to now he's supporting a Trump idea. Vance's notable vulnerabilities with moderates. Vance has taken a populist view on global free trade agreements. Vance appears to have called once for slashing Social Security and Medicare. I guess that is definitely a weakness in politics. Don't want to touch that third rail, right? Vance is opposed to providing child care assistance to low-income Americans. This should make Trump happy, though, right? That should make conservatives tickled pink. Vance appears to oppose student loan forgiveness programs. Yeah, so I signed a promissory note that enables me to get student loan forgiveness, and they want to violate the terms of my contract. Yeah, F you. Vance expressed a series of controversial views during COVID. Vance criticized Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, i.e. that woman, for allowing abortion clinics to stay open under lockdown. Vance, well, I mean, if you need an abortion, you need medical care, it's medical care. You could always go get medical care during the pandemic, so it would be silly to not allow abortion clinics to operate, right? Vance has expressed controversial views as American universities. Vance has pushed pseudo-Christian values, encouraging the traditional nuclear family. Vance appears to oppose the legalization of marijuana. Well, that's just too far, right? I mean, you can't do that. Vance pushed Trump to nominate the controversial figure Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Vance has taken a series of controversial positions concerning race relations. Vance claimed the protests against police violence following the death of George Floyd were distractions for other economic issues, so again, proving he's trash. Vance has been accused of echoing white supremacists with his worries about America's low fertility rate. Separate Washington Post op-ed attacked Vance for alleged comments supporting benefits to, quote, our people. Again, we already saw that he was talking about not working class people, but white working class people, so we all know where he stands on that, right? Vance has taken other controversial positions on culture war topics. He criticized Prince Harry and Meghan Markle for complaining instead of having gratitude for their privilege. Does he actually understand that privilege exists? That's strange for a conservative. Vance said Trump's fight with the NFL over kneeling was a political win for Trump. Vance has ties to various controversial figures. Steve Bannon once called for Vance to become head of the Heritage Foundation. Vance appears to have ties to Alex Jones. Alex Jones and Alex Jones's father's gigantic hog, apparently, as we've learned from Hal. Vance's additional personal and political foibles. Vance's Our Ohio Renewal has been heavily scrutinized by critics. Vance has time working with Revolution LLC, creates a series of notable vulnerabilities with American First conservatives. Steve Case was a vocal supporter of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Vance worked at Revolution, founded by Steve Case. Revolution backed a company invested by former DNC or Democratic presidential candidate John Delaney. Vance was a co-worker of Ron Klain, president of Joe Biden's chief of staff. Oh, you worked with somebody. That makes him terrible. Vance was also involved with Steve Case's rise of the Rest Fund, another controversial role. Vance appears to have enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle since becoming a published author several years ago, because that's what conservatives do. Conservatives will write books, and then that'll be published, and these conservative, media giants will buy up all the books, enabling them to enrich their picked favored candidates. It's just another way to funnel money. It's not as bad as the Trump watch scam, but, as Donald Trump says. Thank you, Donald. Vance ties to Mithril Capital could create vulnerabilities, as after law school, Vance worked at a law firm and then became executive at a biotech company. From there, he left to join Mithril Capital investment firm. I don't understand why that's a big deal, but I'm sure they go into it. Vance's ties to Naria Capital could create vulnerabilities. Appendix A issues of note by subject area. Lots of subject area stuff. So there you go. There's I gave you the link to the thing where you could actually read the entirety. Top hits. Since 2018, Vance has failed to vote in at least 4 elections, including the 2020 primary elections. Vance was not a registered Republican Party voter in Hamilton County between September 18 and May 2022. He has ties to lobbyists. 2016 campaign, Vance was opposed to Trump's candidacy, and now he obviously supports him, clearly because he's his running mate. During 2016, Vance was described as a never-Trumper. During 2016, Vance indicated to believe women who accused Trump of sexual assault. Shocking. In 2016, Vance indicated he believed that one of Trump's sexual assault accusers over Trump and mocked Trump for not telling the truth. In 2016, it was reported that Vance tweeted, "What percentage of the American population has real Donald Trump sexually assaulted?" And now he's his running mate. Maybe next week's Hypocrite of the Week is JD Vance for his comments in a dossier and supporting Donald Trump for president, even though he believes that Donald Trump sexually assaulted people. Vance interrupted me during Ow My Balls. See, Steve, to be a little nerdy before we end, any of my U.S. friends go to see Superman Chris Reeve story. It's limited release here, there in September. It comes here in November. I've not seen it yet, so there you go. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. What the F does working class even mean? Shouldn't we everyone be between school? Well, working class is not like the executive class, for example. Working class are the people that do like manual labor, like usually the blue collar type jobs, not white collar type jobs. But there may be a little more overlap between, you know, the lower class and some of those jobs, some of the hourly jobs with maybe perhaps some people in the middle class. But I think a lot of more middle class folks might be salaried versus hourly, yada, yada, yada. It's my understanding of it. Vance once implied that Trump is prone to lying. That Trump breathes. That what else is new? The spelling of Von Schitz's pants is wrong on my November ballot. I did call on the show Donald Trump MAGA Von Schitz's pants, didn't I? So I'm glad that that's, you know, that more people are saying that. Anyway, this is a 271-page document that I am not going to belabor and go over the entirety of the show. So, but I have given the link again to it. If you wish to read it, go right ahead. You can go into it, but basically we covered the 30,000-foot view of it in that he's basically a giant hypocritical piece of crap. And all of the terrible things that he said, there's a whole bunch of stuff that were terrible that Vance think that Trump did was terrible, yet he still is running mate, which tells you that Vance has no character. That's a huge character flaw. If there's more than one urinal and toilet in the shop bathroom, you're working class. If you need a key to get into the bathroom, you're executive class. If you just shit yourself anywhere, then you are president. Thanks for making me laugh, Whisper Mason. Roxanne, have you seen the PC building video from the early COVID days? How you spell muscles? Love that he's such a nerd. That who's such a nerd? Patty Main? Trump got paid to have Vance as running mate. That could very well be true. I mean, Trump's getting paid a whole bunch of different ways, right? I mean, he's supported by Vance's billionaire supporter, I suppose. There's the whole thing with his watches we covered on Monday, that you can buy his $100,000 watches with Bitcoin, therefore make it easier for foreign countries to buy those watches and funnel money to one Donald Trump, making Donald Trump beholden to those foreign interests and not to us. We all know Donald Trump was never going to have beholden to us. He's only beholden to himself and the people who will do him favors. And well, now we know that one way that they could do that is by buying a watch with Bitcoin on the stupid Trump watch site. You know, of course, the watches that are made or plan to be made, because there's no actual watches at this point. They're just concepts of watches, and those watches are supposedly made or organized or will be made or whatever in the same building that they make honey boner honey, whatever, that you can ingest or whatever, and I guess be very turgid because of the sweet honey from, I guess, so some bees, I guess, that make you virile, so to speak. So there you go. Anyway, so looks like the caller went away. Sorry if I missed you. I did try and get to you, but it was quiet. I don't know if the phones are broken or not, but thank you, Donald. See, I watched one freaking video on the Trump watch, and I'm still getting watch collector videos in my feed. That happens. I mean, I'm surprised that all of y'all didn't get My Pillow things in your feed after I talked about the Nazi imagery on the My Pillow ads. So, don't talk crap about Cavill. My wife very much loves Henry Cavill. Anyway, so I think that'll be it for this week's show. I'm getting more thirsty again. I ran out of water, so I think I need to go grab myself some sort of drink and or snack. Have some other stuff to do before I will go to bed. So this is going to be the end of today's episode of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left. That's right. Unless, again, anything big happens, we'll be back on Monday to talk about other issues of the day. Of course, Monday is 10/7, so obviously we'll be spending a good portion of the show talking about what's going on a year after Israel was attacked by Hamas in that terrorist attack. So, and of course, why I stand in the middle of, two conflicting sides, and a lot of people hate when I have to say it because I'm more pragmatic than anyone else. But anyway, till next time, this is Dan Zimmerman with Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left. That's right.